case you missed it, it's the top 5 sports talkers of the day. Now, it's time for Dan Barreiro's Top 5 at 5.
Guardsy out. Brett Blakemore is in. What do we got?
We're going to start with hockey, and I actually want to start here. I do have to hit this.
Time now for the obligatory Kevin Fallness Minnesota Wild mention.
And it is actually worth mentioning. Obviously, I was going to mention USA-Canada, the essentially gold medal, the championship game last night of the Four Nations face-off. They lose 3-2. But then we had Bill Guerin on at 4 o'clock, and he broke some Kaprizov news saying, quote, "We think he's going to be out longer than we originally thought. He's just recovering now, and we'll see how it turns out," which is not encouraging signs for the superstar coming back. They will be in Detroit tomorrow for a matinee affair against the Red Wings.
Yeah, we had Russo earlier. He kind of had hinted at the same thing, but hearing it, directly from the horse's mouth is helpful, not encouraging. I don't know what to make of it. I don't know if that means it's much more likely that he's just not going to play another minute this season or not. But it certainly opens the door to that possibility. And I think it opens the door to another possibility, that even if he does see the ice this year, what are we going to see? What's the nature of this particular injury, the surgery, et cetera, the whole process? Because we always like to assume, well, if he's back, then we can count on the fact he's going to be 90% of what he was. And I think this is so open-ended at this point. And it's got to be troubling and daunting, because this is not a superstar-laden team. We all know that. And to that extent, if you're that one guy, you become so much more crucial to whatever your hopes and dreams might be of finally breaking through. Now, Guerin dismissed this part, but there's the issue of if he's, out for the year, and that's established, then there is money that can be used at the trade deadline if the Wild is willing to spend it. But then you're back to, yeah, but okay, what is that really going to get? I guess it would probably depend on the player, it would depend on the circumstance, whatever. But I don't think anybody with a straight face will say that no matter how much the message is going to be, we still got to go play games. We still got to do the best we can do. We still got some good players. Let's stick to our script. Let's stick to what we know makes us and has made us at times most of this season an effective hockey team. That all bets are off if you do not have the Kaprizov, who, as Guerin reminded us, was starting the season as the envy of pretty much the entire league. I mean, everybody was watching, seeing this guy emerge what appeared to be on another level. And so it's going to be obviously a slog. And even at the end of the slog, even if he actually appears on the ice, I think there's still no guarantee that you're going to see the same player, right? So it's not a very pretty picture.
Well, then it probably could be another one of those situations where the playoffs are over, they get eliminated, and well, it turns out Kaprizov was at 50% the whole time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Here's the latest with the Timberwolves from what I've seen, unless they post something in the last 2 minutes. Here's your injury report. Questionable is Mike Conley, Anthony Edwards, Rudy Gobert, out. DiVincenzo, Newton, Randall, Edwards, all out. But Johnny Krasinski's spider sense was going off, and he said, some questionable folks tomorrow night. My guess, Rudy and Ant good to go. Conley more of a game time decision. Wolves take on the Rockets in Houston. 8:30 tip, 8:15 pregame right here on the Fan.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're either sport. You're just trying to sort of reconnect, right, with the time off that they've had, and with the Wolves. A couple people have done a good job of trying to sort of analyze the schedule the rest of the way, and I think short term, our schedule is about as meaty as any in the league. But then I think once we get past this stretch of like the next 5, 6, 7 games, it's allegedly the easiest or one of the easiest the rest of the way. So what do you do with that? Well, who knows? It all depends on how well you're playing and, frankly, how much closer you are to getting your two main injured cogs who've been out, the guys you got back in return on the Karl Anthony Towns deal. And Johnny has told us, the last time we had Johnny on, he thought that, generally speaking, that Randall was going to be quicker to come back than DiVincenzo would as well. The other interesting thing is, what do you do with Randall when he is healthy? Because you've seen, Nas emerge nicely as a starter. So do you say, now you have an excuse to say to Randall, we're going to kind of ease you in off the bench and maybe even find out that that's a better fit, a better mix for this team? I don't know. And then you can worry less about the ego blow of Julius Randle not being a starter any longer. I think those are among the questions that will be interesting to watch moving forward.
Speaking of stars being injured, San Antonio Spurs star Victor Wembanyama, he's expected to miss the remainder of the season with essentially a blood clot in his right shoulder.
Yeah.
It was announced yesterday, but you didn't get a chance to talk about it. This would be, I think, I could be speaking out of turn because apparently the Kachuk brothers are not from Florida, so I could do this often. But I think Chris Bosh had something very similar too, and that forced an early retirement from him. So hopefully, this would be a huge blow to basketball with how storied he is.
Massive, given what he, obviously how he is viewed moving forward as a guy who's just sort of figuring this whole thing out. Yeah, it came out of nowhere. I think what we're hearing is there's no reason at this point to think it's going to limit his career. But again, you get into these sorts of areas, who knows what the treatment approach is, what works, what doesn't work. But given the promise he has shown, obviously, a massive loss, not just for the Spurs, but potentially for the National Basketball Association. And I guess a reminder that, you can never take health for granted. You really can. No matter what the age is, you can't take health for granted.
I got one more for you. I didn't get to it yesterday, but I just find it fascinating. I'm familiar with an offensive lineman, John, I'm going to go with Feliciano. He announced his retirement from the NFL, but kind of. He said, after months of weighing my options, I realized I had to leave the game. The fire is still there, but I don't know if I can last a full season, and I can't bring myself to let people down. He says, being on a team and unable to help your boys out is rough. That being said, Buffalo or San Francisco, I'll be ready for a playoff run in December if you need me. Is this allowed? Can you just regular season retire, and then just come back in the playoffs? He's breaking the rules.
Maybe you can. I don't know. I have no idea. Do we have much precedent for that?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
I think you have to be all in or all out.
That's what I'd like to think. Yeah, you're right.
I don't know if the pay would work, but I just find that fascinating.
It is unusual.
Can do that.
Highly unusual. By the way, there's one other story you didn't get to that a couple people have brought to our attention that we're going to try to get to before Lavelle joins at 5:30 this evening. If you have questions for Lavelle, hit the Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line. That is 64686.
Before we go, the fan wants to give you a shot to put $1,000 in your hand at the National Cash Contest. Head to KFAN.com. Enter the keyword green for this hour. The keyword green, KFAN.com. Keyword green.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my side softer?
Can I make my side firmer?
Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. Your Sleep Number setting. And now, save 50% on the new Sleep Number Limited Edition Smart Bed. Limited time. Exclusively at a Sleep Number store near you. Learn more at sleepnumber.com.
Heads up, Minnesota Slightly Stupid is coming to town with their unique blend of reggae, rock, and blues. Don't miss out on this epic night when they take the stage at the Ledge Amphitheater August 6th. Tickets on sale now. Full details, KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
Canada, USA, NHL, Four Nations Face-Off Championship delivers ESPN's largest hockey audience ever, 9.3 million viewers. Peak was 10.4 mil. Most viewed event on ESPN platform since the 2024 NBA Finals, excluding NFL and CFB. Is that college football? Most viewed non-NFL event ever on ESPN+. In addition, according to the NHL, there were 16.1 million viewers across North America. That includes the 9.3 million in the U.S. and 6.8 million in Canada. which obviously puts it in fairly rarefied air as well. So if we're getting any, and again, as we talked about with Russo, how accurate are some of these numbers? Do they include everything that should be included in 2024-25? I don't know, but it gives you some indication at just how, relatively speaking, how popular this event was and how things worked out better than anybody at the NHL could have possibly envisioned when they came up with this idea. We talked about all that with Bill Guerin, by the way, at 4, in addition to getting to some Kaprizov news later. But after the show, you want to podcast the first half hour of the 4 o'clock hour, I should say, if you missed it first time around, because I thought Guerin was quite good on a number of things regarding the team, how the team was put together, changes that might be made, etc. The big news that you missed for the top 5 is that it doesn't get any bigger than this, really. The New York Yankees are reversing decades and decades of team policy, going all the way back to the George Steinbrenner days. They're going to allow, wait for it, facial hair.
Oh my gosh.
I can't. There's a part of me that is still stunned that we are actually having this conversation in 2025. It seems so passé. But we were reminded the Yankees were one of those holdouts, and now they're trying to liberalize things. And as I understand it, they have to be quote unquote well groomed. What is that? Does that mean the Yankee ownership? They will make that evaluation on what is well groomed and what, is something less than that worthy of our discussion, that no, you can't wear that particular look, but that other look was okay if you trim it just a little bit more? Is it going to be like somebody's going to take a ruler, a measuring stick, a tape measure to the facial hair to see, how wildly it goes beyond what would be, tight cropped one? I don't know. We all have our opinions on how things look. Obviously, I get that, but I just at this point thought I really did think we were kind of past this. And I don't know if there are any other teams besides the Yankees. I want to say there might have been a West Coast team that did this some, but I don't remember for sure. Yankees are the ones who made a big deal of it, going all the way back to George Steinbrenner. So this is actually being considered in New York, especially a huge story, a massive change that changes everything for the Bronx Bombers. They're saying, you know what, we've reconsidered it. We've had a long talk with ourselves, and just make sure it's tightly cropped. But you can have, I assume, mutton chops, sideburns. You can have a beard. You can have a stash. But it can't be one of those free-flowing ones like we do see from some teams and some pitchers and some players, right, where it just kind of goes almost in Rip Van Winkle style.
My guess is that it can't go like off of the face. You know what I mean?
Guess that's
like
what it
coverage.
is, yeah.
But here's something. Here's the next,
So you can't go ZZ Top on the bit. Okay.
No, I think. But here's the next, obstacle we got to get over, for lack of a better word. I read this in the article. The modification does not address the organization's policy on hair length, which stipulates that you're not allowed to grow hair below their collar.
Oh, so that means they're standing tall on that one.
Yeah, that's just wild and crazy to have long hair.
Yeah, I guess it
Can't
is
do that.
At this point. I just don't know what I've never understood, having spent a decent amount of time around baseball players and in clubhouses and in dugouts. I've never understood this notion of decorum. It's the sport of spitting. It's the sport of, blowing your nose onto the grass. It's the sport of the level of grossness. If you're ranking grossness by sport, I think baseball players would be absolute at the top of the list. So the idea that, on the other hand, though, we're going to have this certain decorum about your hair length, and because we stand for something, I've never quite understood. So that's the big change, and it's, as I've said, getting a lot of getting a lot of reaction nationally. And part of it is because it's a fun, it's actually a funny story. People are having fun with it. But in New York, apparently, they're taking it very, very seriously. UPS has a similar appearance standard. No facial hair longer than 3 inches. I did not know that. Did you?
I had no idea.
UPS.
Which is weird.
Is that United Parcel?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm guessing so.
Okay.
But yeah, but that I don't know. I don't see how that's anyway. I don't get that one.
Yeah, it's very strange to me. I think the Reds used to have a facial hair rule back in the day. Charlie Finley got paid a bonus to A's players that had a mustache. Yeah, they definitely had. Those A's teams were very wild and crazy in that regard. Are mutton chop sideburns acceptable for the Yankees? I assume if they're closely cropped, yes. But that's what I'm trying to figure out. I mean, how specific did they get about, how you measure these things? Is it just by, we just arbitrarily will make decisions on the basis of what we see? Or do we take out a ruler or a tape measure to determine, just how far off the face these particular hair follicles are being allowed to grow?
At least the good thing with the previous rule is that it was black and white. You know what I mean? No facial hair.
Yeah, that's true. It made it easy. There was nothing subjective about it.
And
You're
now
right.
it's all, what about this? And what about this? And how about this? Yeah, so now it's just more confusion.
Yeah. Well, we'll probably talk about this with Lavelle because he reminds us that the Twins had a facial hair policy. I assume we don't anymore. I assume we're with it in a while in that regard. I actually don't remember going back to the TK days, although when I think about it, well, Jeff Reardon certainly had a beard, but I thought it was a fairly closely cropped one. It wasn't like there were no beards on the club, but those long flowing ones that have become fashionable in some locations, I think, or maybe the ones that would be, as we call it in the business, a bridge too far. They've always allowed mustaches, apparently. The Yankees, is that true?
I believe that's the case, yeah.
Well, that's facial hair.
Yeah, because I remember it was like Matt Carpenter was the one.
Okay. He
used to have a beard when he was playing for the Cardinals, and he went to the Yankees. It was just this bushy mustache. So, yeah, they do that.
This is Dan's flu game. I hope not. A couple people have said they actually prefer my voice huskier like this. I think there's ways you could actually try to arrange that more permanently, but I don't think I want to go down. And I think that has to do with boozing, among other things, to thicken the voice a little bit. I don't.
Tea.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't want to mess with that kind of stuff. So yeah, I don't know how long this is going to last, but as long as it takes to get past this nasty flu bout that a lot of people I'm learning have indeed been dealing with the last several weeks. I mentioned Lavelle. We'll have a lot of different subjects to get into with him. We'll get his reaction to a big hockey night last night. The Wild season resuming tomorrow. The Wolves season resuming tonight. And we'll get to some other stories, including Twins' facial hair history. He can remind me of some policies that apparently I had completely and utterly forgotten about. If you have questions for Lavelle, KFAN text line, Bradshaw and Bryant, KFAN text line remains 64686. Lavelle next.
Grind Your Hand is back on KFAN. We have 9 chances for you to win $1,000 every weekday, every hour from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. To enter the keywords and to learn more, head to KFAN.com.
It's Lavelle time, brought to you by Allery's Bar in St. Paul, your home of free parking and wild shuttles. He joins us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline, and I appreciate you filling in. Was it 2 days ago? Was it yesterday? I can't even remember.
It was Wednesday. Guardsy was yesterday.
That's right. Guardsy was yesterday. You were on Wednesday. That worked out very well, because I had told Kessler, I assumed it was going to be Sinekin, and I don't think Sinekin and Kessler have a good vibe. So my assumption was that he would be out, but then it turns out that he was on because he apparently is quite comfortable working with you, and you're quite comfortable working with him.
Kessler sat in for an hour and was an absolute smash hit.
Yeah.
He was successful in polarizing the listenership.
Yes.
On several topics. The text line was just going bananas. It was just.
It usually does.
It was like scrolling.
Yeah. That usually works that way. I'm used to that.
Yeah. So it's good to see that you're back. Although you still don't sound all the way back, but at least you're back enough to get back into the big chair.
I'm doing what I can to fight my way through it. That's for sure. I want to get to a lot of different subjects. One of the things that I had intended to get to earlier in the show that I want to address at least briefly with you is I am officially sick of media obsession, sports media obsession, pro basketball media obsession with who's the next face of the league. And the idea that we have to have these grand pronouncements. I was encouraged to hear Charles Barkley and that crew just go off on that very same subject because it's boring. It's lazy because I think it's just an attempt to sort of create debate, whatever. And it doesn't really get us anywhere. The idea that we're going to decide who the next faces of the league is going to be, because usually, Lavelle, the way it works is it just happens. There's no need for these pronouncements that this is the next face of the league, because often it turns out that's not the guy who's the face of the league, even though at that moment, that flavor of the month moment, it feels that way. And there was a similar thing. I saw, I don't know how recent this video was, and it was President Obama, now out of office, obviously, but recent, and he's chatting with Ant and a couple other players, and I don't even know what the circumstance of it was, but it was people, whoever had tweeted it was aroused by the fact that Ant continued to sort of either refer to himself as the truth, and I'm the truth about this. Like, we are way too hung up on this nonsense, as if people proclaiming things mean anything, prove anything about that particular player. I don't know why, and it's become, I think, largely media driven most of the time. That you know what, if he says he's the truth, he must be the truth. Words are cheap, man. It just doesn't work for me any longer. We got to get off that stuff, don't you think?
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly, especially when, Edwards' career, I mean, while it's very, very promising,
yes.
we don't know where it's headed.
No.
And it's going to be up to him to determine that. His career is going to be the sum of his choices here. and he's got to continue to prove that he can lead the Wolves and make them a threat and have success. And usually if you're very good and you have a lot of success, then you're up in those conversations. I will say this, too. Who cares? Do sports need a face of the league, of a sport?
Mm-hmm.
Derek Jeter was the face of baseball for many years. Who's the face of baseball now? Do we have one?
Right.
Is it Aaron Judge? I don't know. Is it Mike Trout? No, he's a reluctant superstar. Who's the face? I guess you could probably say Sidney Crosby, as Russo has described as a serial winner. He would be it for hockey, but yeah, we get caught up on these things too much, and then the next conversation moves over to, okay, well, how many rings has he won? Which is another silly argument. It's just a reason for people to bloviate and to fill space on talk shows like this one or in others across the country.
You're 100% right. I feel like basketball seems to be the sport that's most obsessed with proclaiming next face of the game. I just don't think other sports are quite as fascinated with it, or you just wait it out and say, okay, well, it'll become apparent. Over a period of time, it will become obvious, and we won't need to have these sorts of silly debate. And I don't even know what they mean. Does that mean you're the best player? Does that mean you are, because of your sheer force of personality, more popular? Okay, great. We're happy for you, but it's become epidemic. And it's a real problem, I guess I should say.
No, you're right. And once again, the rings argument comes into play. And to be honest with you, if you put a gun to my head and said, "Give me some candidates to be an NBA face of the league, I probably would go with someone like Jason Tatum, but he's not an extrovert either.
No, he's not at all.
He's
right.
not but he's a damn good player who's been
Great
successful,
player. Yep.
who's does it in and out year to year. If anyone deserves that recognition, it would be him, but he probably will reject that because he's more of a dirt farmer. He just kind of minds his own business and plows the back 40.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And he doesn't have a lot of that outward charisma that I guess we're looking for.
Right.
Which is fine.
Right.
I mean, they're different players are different, but he falls very much into that category for sure. All right. So refresh my memory. We were talking after the top 5 at 5 about the big Yankees proclamation that, hey, we're going to allow responsible facial hair. But I mean, so a couple of people have said, well, there are a lot of Yankees that had like mutton chop sideburns. So were sideburns always okay? What was the old Steinbrenner rule, and what, as you understand it, is the new rule?
The rule was no facial hair. I don't think sideburns counted because I believe guys like Lou Piniella had sideburns, right? I think they did.
Thurman Munson,
but in terms of mustaches and super beards, I think Ron Guidry had a mustache when he pitched for the Yankees, didn't he?
He did.
Maybe he did.
Yes, I think you're right.
But in the history of baseball, some of the most bearded wonders of the game, once they joined the Yankees, they had to shave. Randy Johnson, it looked like a mountain man.
Yeah.
Had to shave.
Right, yeah.
Jason Giambi, just a manly man's beard, had to shave. So I was floored, to be honest with you, hearing about this policy, because I will tell you, I'm kind of surprised because usually this happens because of a transaction or bringing in a player who, okay, we're going to have to bend rules if he's going to if we're going to help him come in. The Twins had a facial hair policy, but they needed a closer in '87, and they traded for Jeff Reardon. Okay, that's when that policy went out the window.
Oh, I didn't remember that. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, they used to have a no braids policy, and David Ortiz would show up at Twins Fest with braids, but by the time camp opened, he would have shaved cut them off.
Really?
I don't know when that changed, because all I know is that Irvin Santana had a full flock of braids when he pitched for the Twins. And he actually cut off his braids during I think it was his last year with the team. He said he lost like five pounds of weight while doing it. I thought the one thing that made the Yankees was that they had such a policy.
Yeah, I do. We know? Were they the last team that had such a policy in place that we know of?
I don't know of any team that has a similar policy. I think facial hair is allowed all over baseball now in some fashion. I'm thinking of, the Brewers never had one. The White Sox never had one. At least I don't think the White Sox had one. Let's see, who's a bearded White Sox player? Oh, Lamar Hoyt. Yeah. No, they never had. Right. I don't think they had much of a policy. Definitely not the Cubs. So this may be it. It's a good. I got to get on baseball chat string and make sure that the teams don't have one, and I'll get back with you. Yeah,
maybe there is there are one or two that we don't spend much time. I guess I'd completely forgotten the Yankees. I shouldn't say that. I knew the Yankees had one, but I had not really spent all that much time on it because I just assumed somehow by now it had evolved to a place where it was no longer an issue. That's why the story took me kind of by surprise.
Yeah. Oh, I can understand that, but I just remember whenever they added one of these superstars that had beards, I always wanted to watch the press conference the next day just to see how they looked without facial hair, because I was used to him. Randy Johnson's facial hair was like a trademark,
Yeah, right.
So was Giambi. So those are the two that jump out at me as guys who had to kind of shave. Ron Coomer had to shave his. Ron Coomer was a goatee guy.
That's true.
He joined the Yankees. He had to cut his goatee off, So that was like part of the fun of watching people join the Yankees, at least for me, because I thought it was rather unique that they had such a policy, and just to see how guys are willing to abide.
But it sounds like, according to what Blakemore tells me, the hair policy is in the length of hair. It's still got to be can't really go down much below the collar. Apparently, that is unchanged. Is that correct?
I believe so. I believe if the story I read was correct, I think that's what I read online. So yeah, so there's still there's still some. They're not going all the way, with this. They're just going partial way. Yeah, Johnny Damon. I remember he grew a big beard with the Red Sox and had long hair. And I think he had to adapt when he joined the Yankees. I'm thinking about more guys who have had to change their look because of the pinstripes. So, I guess, the length of the hair will be the final frontier before the Yankees truly have conformed to the rest of Major League Baseball's hairstyle.
It surprises me, though, that even that is still a possibility in 2025. You know what I mean? It's just like really? Or you're still going to worry about stuff like that? In your time covering the Twins, who comes to mind as having the most, you could say creative, wildest sort of hair ensemble, whether you're talking about facial hair or you're just talking about length of actual hair itself?
Well, we see Terry Mulholland was up there. He had a long flock of hair and a big beard to go with it.
Okay.
Gladden's facial hair jumps out to me. Let's see. I can't remember any really big mustaches. Hair color. That was a couple instances there. When Byron Buxton was called up, the team he was on, the minor league team he was on, was in a slump, so they all went out and dyed the top of their hair gold. And then Buck gets called up the next day. So here he is in the clubhouse. He's got this gold ring around his head. And I'm sitting there thinking, this guy may be a little bit of prima donna here, But I didn't know the story that he had went along with the rest of the team to try to break a slump and dyed his hair. Frankie Rodriguez showed up to spring training one year with his hair dyed. It was supposed to be gold, but ended up being a weird color. And Greg Swindell, I gotta make sure I recite the clean part of this response. Greg Swindell said, "Your hair looks like someone urinated on a tennis ball and left it out in the sun all day."
Oh man, that's cold.
So that was probably one of the crazier hair schemes I've seen. But high top fades, not many. Not too many dreads other than Irvin Santana. Definitely a few beards and mustaches. And then there were guys who just wanted to look perfectly coiffed. The left-hander. The left-handed reliever pitched in 02, 03, 04. God. J.C. Romero.
Romero
was meticulous about not having a single follicle
out of place. Yeah.
I remember I was talking with someone, and I said, J.C. Romero must spend like 45 minutes a day doing his hair, because it's like perfect every time he comes out in the field, regardless if he's sweating or not. So it's perfect. It got back to J.C. Romero, and he comes back, and he's like complaining about something I wrote. Then at the end he says, "Well, by the way, I only take 20 minutes a day to do my hair."
Took it very personally, did he?
He did.
Yeah.
He did.
Did Herbie ever have facial hair?
Yes. He had kind of a goatee.
Yeah, I guess he did. You're right. Yeah. Well, and it wasn't like a real lengthy one, but it was, a little scruffy. And Gladden's actual hair got pretty long, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, when he was running, it looked like his head was on fire, because it was like this flowing gold locks of hair flying with him. So, I wish I was buying my old baseball cards. That's the best way to kind of check out people's hairstyles. True. Go through the old baseball cards.
You kind of forget.
and see what pictures they were taking. But, nothing super. I never covered a handlebar mustache. A bunch of goatees, though. Another person whose hair looked like it was painted on. Rick Aguilera.
Oh, Aggie, yes. It's unbelievable. Yeah.
And his was absolutely
immaculate.
Perfect. It looked like immaculate. Looked like it definitely looked like it was painted on.
Yeah, he did. He was the gold standard when it comes to beards. There's no question about that. There was never a hair out of place. It was always perfectly trimmed. It was remarkable.
It hasn't changed. I saw him a couple years ago.
Is that right?
It has not changed one bit.
Not changed at all. Wow. Good for him. So let me ask you about the hockey night last night. We spent a lot of time early. We had Russo on. We had Bill Guerin on. Blakemore and I have been mixing it up on that subject as well. What you took out of it last night, and is there the numbers are record breaking for hockey. The question is what the NHL can do with it, if anything. What's the fair thing you would say to take out of what was obviously a wildly successful tournament and a great finish, even if the U.S. Unfortunately did fall short?
Well, I think one thing, it just reignited the rivalry between the United States and Canada, and there was talk that the United States had a deeper team and they could win a tournament like this, and obviously the Canadians had something else to offer in this tournament, so they proved them wrong. I kind of wrote about this for Sunday, actually. The thing we can take away is that All-Star games suck, and we can find other ways to celebrate the game without having stupid contests end up being 12-11 when the goalies look like they're just a conduit to the net for pucks. I think it's a way to get eyeballs on the game. With the Buffalo ratings they had, that helps with advertising revenue and corporate sponsorships. So, but it was just cool to see the best on best format, because we hadn't seen one since the 2016 World Cup of Hockey, I believe, and then before that was the 2014 Olympics. That was the last time the NHL players were allowed to play, and so it was just great to see that format again. Sweden with Eriksson Ek and Gus Bus, and Finland, and with Granlund, former Wild player Mikael Granlund, and of course USA and Canada. In circumstances that it made the four nations face-off fit because of what's going on in the world. Russia wasn't involved, but you like to hope that going forward will be a more peaceful times where they can have more of a World Cup of hockey, that includes everybody, because then Russia would probably be one of the favorites in that format because of the first of all, they've got like 10 goaltenders who could probably start for Canada. And then, of course, they have guys like Kaprizov. So I think it's great. I have always gotten excited about international competition. People get really patriotic when these sport events like the Olympics come around. And I think it's awesome when professional sports can kind of follow suit. And so I was just advocating that for Sunday's paper, that we need more of this. Basketball should take a look at this. I think the baseball All-Star game is probably one of the easier ones to watch. But even then, I'm a big World Baseball Classic Bobo. I'd like to see that be incorporated during All-Star Week, to be honest with you, instead of having it during spring training. Football is the only sport that I think it's hopeless because of just the physicality,
right?
And the injuries that could happen. You can't do it during the middle of the season. Guys don't want to get hurt after the season. So maybe the skills challenge is just the best way to go. But I wrote about some of this for Sunday. And the WPHL shut down their league for the IHF World Championships last year, which I thought was the right thing to do. This could help. The women's sport could benefit from a spot like this as well. I saw it in Beijing during the Olympics in 2022. There were 100 players who played college hockey in the United States who were on like several teams all over the world, like a bunch of European teams. There are a couple players who played for the Chinese team who played at United States universities. That it's become a developmental ground for women's professional hockey, and the game is growing, and they could benefit from a format like this instead of an all-star game. So I think it just taught us a lesson that if we can move on from just having these I called it eyewash for corporate sponsors, but if we just move on from all-star games, they're going to end up being just blowouts or high-scoring affairs where everybody's not trying their best. I think everybody's better off that way.
The NBA part, though, I don't know if you try to do. I'm not sure it would translate like a U.S. versus international. I just don't know if the sensibility is such that you can necessarily engineer the same kind of intensity. Now, maybe there's a way I'm not thinking of, but because I think haven't we kind of done that where in the attempt to sort of split up the teams in a way that wasn't the conventional East-West, I thought we've already kind of done that. And I don't know. I'm not sure that the NBA is going to be able to duplicate anything like this. And I'm not even sure the NHL is, because as we talked about with Guerin and Russo, The time of year is a question. Injuries, significant injuries coming out of this thing that I think is going to be harder to convince owners and players to sustain it, even if they're going into it with trying to be intense. I think it's going to be hard across the board, but I'm not sure at all the NBA can duplicate it.
I touched on that, actually, because I think once the Four Nations began, NBA players were asked about a USA versus the world format. I think Giannis was fired up about it and said he'd be interested in doing it. But I also said that I don't know if the world team's really going to be that motivated because they're not playing for their country. They're playing.
Exactly.
They're a conglomerate of players from different countries trying to be. So I don't know. And plus, the NBA, the whole NBA mindset. We're in the load management era of the NBA, and I don't know guys who want to get into that high intensity tournament in the middle of the season. So I think hockey can do it because I think there's more. I don't want to say animosity. It just seems like there's a little bit more of a rivalry attitude when you look at Russia versus Finland and USA and Canada. That I think would work. We are risking overload on this because now we're going to go straight to the Olympics next year. Then 2 years later, World Cup of Hockey, then the Olympics again, then more World Cup of Hockey. Will that be too much in the coming years? We'll have to wait and see. And yes, the injuries come out of this. McAvoy's injury to the shoulder, the broken wrist Theodore suffered. Is that going to give people pause as well? But I think when you see the ratings and you look at how leagues can benefit and prosper off of this, I think it's going to be should be seriously considered.
We had mentioned Billy Guerin on earlier, and he made some news today with us confirming that the originally the believed amount of time it was going to take Kaprizov to recover and potentially get on the ice is no longer operable. He's going to be out longer than was originally expected, which of course opens the door to the possibility that he's not going to play at all. He wouldn't go that far, but he certainly didn't close the door to that. And I can't imagine a more daunting, revelation when it comes to this team, because we all know that no matter how well they've kind of figured out a way they need to play to be effective, no matter who's out on the ice, you have to have some high enders, and he is their high ender. And it sounds as if this is going to be a challenge the rest of the way, which pretty much changes everything in terms of this team's fortunes for this year, does it not?
That is a damning blow to the Wild, and it's weird because this week I do these daily debates with Michael Rand, and one of them was which team is in a better position to surge once the postseason comes. I took the Wild, and he took the Wolves. And the reason I took the Wild because I thought Kaprizov eventually would be back. But I always kept in mind that when this injury was initially announced and the surgery was announced, they never said he'd be back definitely in 4 or 5 weeks. They would say a minimum a month. And so that told me that it could grow to 5 or 6 weeks. And now it sounds like it could be longer than that. First of all, I don't want to see Kaprizov on the ice at 70% trying to will his way through a postseason. We want to see him healthy for the long term, and I don't unless the doctors can assure him that you're going to have to play with some discomfort or whatever you're dealing with, you can play with, and not worry about aggravating it. Then I'd be okay with that. But at this point, I'm like, I want to make sure this guy is close to 100%. This is the Wild's meal ticket. This is one of the top 15 players in the league. And you don't want to have him do something stupid. So, yeah, you keep him out as long as possible. And I commend the Wild for trying to, as you pointed out, for coming up with ways to win games and be competitive without him. I thought that was a great trait that they have shown in recent weeks to stay relevant in the Western Conference. But, now that looks like in peril, too, because I think now, knowing that he may be out longer than anticipated, can they keep it up? That's just a very concerning development. I wasn't listening when you had Bill on, so I was not aware until you just mentioned it. So, that's a little bit. I'm not totally shocked, but still, it's still hard to handle once you know for sure that he's not coming back as early as they had hoped.
You mentioned the Wolves, and they, of course, have their own injury issues. These are not supposed to be as serious injuries. Most people think Randall will be back before DiVincenzo, but they start, back tonight, second game of the national doubleheader on ESPN, a game you can also hear right here on the flagship FM 100.3 The Fan in Houston against the Rockets. So can the Wolves be put back together in a way that we're not similarly kind of like, where are we really going? The way we're talking about the Wild if Kaprizov can't come back. What's your current view on the possibility of the Wolves, who I guess have a really hard schedule early and then the easiest schedule once they get past the next 6 or 7 games the rest of the way, the Wolves being able to kind of put something together here?
Yeah, I'm concerned about that because they've had too many troubling performances for me to think they can get everything calibrated. Plus, it's taken much longer than any one of us anticipated for them to figure out how to make all this work in the post-Karl-Anthony Towns era. The injuries definitely have not helped, but once Randall and DiVincenzo come back, you're still trying to fine-tune this thing. And there's 68 games into the season, and I think I don't know if you could change who you are once 2/3 of the season, regular season is it 68? I think they play 68 games, right? Double check that, Brett. I think they played 68 games. Well, that sounds maybe a little high. But I think it's just hard for our team to change who it is at this point. We've still been waiting for all this to click and to watch this gel beautifully, but it hasn't happened. So yeah, I'm more concerned about the Wolves. Plus, guys are banged up. Edwards' hip has been an issue now for 2-3 weeks now, right. And other guys aren't 100%. And when Randall comes back, well, how's that going to upset the apple cart here? Because it looks like Naz Reid looks pretty good, playing next to Gobert. You and I have kicked around the possibility of him coming off the bench once he gets off the injured list or whatever they call it in basketball. I mentioned that in the media room. They got laughed out of the room. They were like, no, he's got to start. So okay, I'm like, whatever. I don't like what I'm looking at. And plus, they've had this run where they just lose games they have no business to lose. I was at the Bucks game, and the Milwaukee's got guys like, who is that guy? I thought he was a trainer. I didn't know he was an NBA player. They're on the floor beating the Wolves. Now, the next night, they come out and beat Oklahoma City. Great. Yeah. But it's canceled out by these maddening performances against the Milwaukees of the world. So that's my head. That's another reason I'm scratching my head over this team. So I've got my doubts that they're going to – I got my doubts. They'll probably don't – right now, if you ask me to predict, they're going to be in playing game hell once the playoffs come.
Yeah, the Wolves 31-25. They've played 56 games.
56. So we got a little more. Yeah, we got a little more left than you thought, perhaps. There's still time.
There's still about 2/3 of the season.
Yeah, I mean, there's still time if you get on a kind of a roll and then put yourself in maybe a better position and not having to worry about the play-in at the very least. We'll have to see. We'll read you Sunday. We appreciate the time as always, sir. We'll chat next week.
Thanks for having me. Good to hear you back, man. Hope you continue to recover.
Thanks, Lavelle. That is Lavelle E. Neal III, brought to you by Allery's Bar in St. Paul, your home of free parking and wild shuttles. Do you believe in miracles? We'll explain when we come back.
Get ready, Minnesota. ZZ Top is bringing their legendary rock sound to the land of 10,000 lakes. Don't miss your chance to see these rock icons live at the Ledge Amphitheater June 12th. Tickets on sale now. You can get all the details, KFAN.com. Keyword calendar.
Yeah, ZZ Top beards still don't think would work in the New York Yankees clubhouse. Don't think they'd have much of a chance.
They're probably used as the guideline to here's what not to do.
That's probably it. And it's funny because we just talked about that earlier in the show, so it's an interesting promo that you just laid out. Final half hour or so of the bumper-to-bumper program for a Friday. And I had mentioned much earlier in this program, and I didn't get as much pushback on it as I thought I would at the time, that as great a night as it was last night, not just for hockey, but for sports, period, in certainly North America. The one thing that did make me wince a little bit, that I found a bit over the top, was the effort to try to wake up the echoes of the miracle of Lake Placid. I continue to believe that you leave that one alone. You don't pretend that you can approximate it, that you can duplicate it, that's a sacred, not just hockey, but sports moment in North America, certainly the United States of America. And the effort to try to bring that whole conversation into this thing in the lead up to last night, I'm just shaking my head and said, no, you're trying too hard. It's not necessary. This event, there's enough to build on from the event itself. In fact, the way it had sort of come out of nowhere and surprised people with the level of intensity and passion. Lawyer Tom writes, I was 14 in the 1980 Winter Olympics. The Miracle on Ice speech was out of place and off base. This was not the plucky college kids versus the hated Russians. This was American Pro All-Stars versus Canadian Pro All-Stars. Coin flip game versus our neighbors to the north, who are not really our enemies. Tariffs and some booing and nonsense from our leaders aside, making this into wrap ourselves in the red, white, and blue and slay the big foreign menace was over the top and had this child of the Cold War rolling his eyes. They're just so different, especially pertaining to the participants. What made that event unique was the fact that you had who you had out there against the big bad Russians, right? College kids. That was the story, and it can't be duplicated again. So don't bother. Don't try. You're trying too hard. You don't need to bring the Herbie Brooks, portions of the Miracle speech, pregame speech from the motion picture itself back there. I just thought it was a classic case of not only trying too hard, but I actually think it, in an odd sort of way, is disrespectful of what that event, the uniqueness of that event, was in the first place. Because there'll never be anything like. That's the beauty of the story. Conditions are so different. There will never be a way to approximate that or come close to it. But if you want to forget the politics, I don't even want to bring the politics into it, or of the Cold War at the time, as big a story as that was at that point. It was who they were playing, who they were, their ages, and who they were playing. Basically professionals. And to just say, okay, well, let's see, it's a big hockey moment. Oh, that's what we'll go back to. We'll go back to the Miracle moment. No, you don't always have to scratch that itch. And even, as I said, you asked me about, they brought Ruzioni out. That's great. We're happy for you. But he's got nothing to do with this. And again, this is such a different event. You can't pretend that these are college kids. These are all, relatively speaking, highly compensated professional hockey players, some of literally the best in the world, well-established men, adults. And the 1980 story was they were, like I said, just a bunch of kids. And that's what made that story as dramatic as it was. There were, again, I just think there were a million ways to advance the story, to promote the story. And I understand they get in a meeting and they go, we got to have a big open. This thing is bigger than we ever thought it was going to be. So we just can't have your basic welcome to Boston. We can't do that. We got to have something. We got to have some narration. We've got to have something. There's got to be a way to convey the bigness of it. But in this case, I just shook my head and said, no, don't bother. Don't bother for people. And maybe if you weren't around for it, you won't even notice it because you can't really completely appreciate what that was like at that particular moment. And there was nothing like it ever before, and there will never be anything like it again. Are we putting $1,000 in our hand one more time, or are we done for the day?
Done for the day.
Done for the day. We hope we help somebody win. That's always our goal on this program. I do want to come back and wrap things up with some highlights from a very busy program, as it turns out. Russo, Guerin, Gessling, and Lavelle. We'll give you the highs and the lows as we prepare you for the rest of the night right here in the Fan.
It's the Bumper to Bumper Show Wrap.
It's brought to you by American Pressure.
Am I questionable for sermons? Jeremy writes. I'd like to think not. Since I gutted it out today, I'd like to say I'm, going to try to keep the streak going. I'd rather not go back to miss on Sunday. So my best hope is to, unless I have, I'm on the drugs now, which I think are helping, but it is taking a little bit longer than I had originally thought. So,
probable.
I'd call myself probable right now, but that obviously can change. We'll see how this thing goes. It's nice that, we're not minus 30 anymore. We seem to be, at least for a stretch now, to be headed in a better direction in that regard. Tonight on the Fan, we have Minnesota Timberwolves basketball. They are the second game of the national doubleheader. In fact, game one just commenced in Cleveland. The Cavs are hosting New York. That, of course, means they're hosting Karl Anthony Towns. And then game two, Minnesota is at Houston. And all the action can be heard on the Fan beginning 8:30. I'm assuming 8:15 pregame in
That's
that range.
Correct. Yes.
Tonight from Houston, Texas, as the Wolves also resume action, trying to get some stuff going. Have we seen any more injury updates since we last talked about this in the top five? Probably still too early for any major since it's a late start.
I would imagine it'd be too soon, but I can look real quick.
Yeah, double check. We got a couple minutes left. If there's anything new there,
no, nothing yet.
Nothing new as we move forward. I thought a fairly eventful program, all things considered. A lot of hockey talk through the first 90 minutes of the show, including a visit with Russo Radio, who is back here. I don't think he's tracking. I think Joe Smith's with the Wild. The Wild went straight. Well, I should say Guerin and Wild players who were participating in the tournament went on to Detroit. We've got a matinee affair tomorrow. So do we have the usual... what's the programming tomorrow? Are you on tomorrow with Fallness?
Yes. So It'll be a truncated Beyond the Pond Fallness, probably from the X. Okay. And then go straight into pregame.
And we're playing the Red Wings, correct?
Yes, tomorrow.
In Detroit. So we talked with Russo about his thoughts on the tournament just concluded last night, and then also had some good bonus time with Billy Guerin early on. His excitement with the way generally the tournament went, his disappointment with his team ultimately losing in overtime, of course, in a very entertaining game. And then he broke a little bit of Minnesota Wild Kaprizov news, saying flat out that he is not on the Kaprizov is not healing at the pace they hoped, and that he will be out longer than the previous believed period of time was going to be 6 weeks, I think, right? So he didn't give us an actual number, but he definitely, I don't think it was an accident that he conveyed the message. I think he's trying to send out the message that don't be surprised or disappointed if this thing's going to linger. And then the next step is the obvious. What does that lingering mean? Does that mean he may literally not play for this season? He did not rule that out. He didn't say he didn't declare it, but he didn't rule that out either. Then it gets tricky regarding, at the trade deadline, which is, what is it, like March? It's early March, right? Like March 6th or March 8th?
Yeah, it's coming.
It's coming.
Right around the corner.
So there's a lot of ramifications there. We covered a lot of it with Guerin. That was between 4 and 4:30 after Russo. Ben Gessling getting us back to some grounded football conversation between 4:30 and 5. And I sense from Ben a greater and greater belief that the Darnold domino is going to fall with him being gone. He didn't flat out say that, but he thinks there's more and more reason to believe that that's the way this thing seems to be headed. And maybe no big surprise there, but there's been so much speculation both ways regarding the possibility of him coming back that Gessling definitely gave us the impression that he thinks it's far more likely at this point that Daniel Jones will be the veteran quarterback presence for the Vikings this year, and that obviously means J.J. McCarthy is going to have a chance to be the guy probably almost from the very beginning. Lavelle on the hockey story, on the Yankees making big news regarding their now liberalized facial hair policy. I never knew we'd get so much play out of that particular story, but we did. And we talked a little Wild with him. We also talked a little Timberwolves, too. So what we might do Sunday, we had a long time ago said we were going to occasionally, like, bring back interviews from during the week. We might end up playing back a portion of the Bill Guerin interview on Sunday. We'll see how the rest of the weekend develops. That might make it a little easier on my voice as well, but it's not the worst thing on Sundays to bring back a good interview that we have indeed had during the week. So that might be part of the plan. When's the high school hockey tournament? How far are we off from that?
Well, the girls' one, I believe, is happening now.
Is it?
Yeah.
There you go.
So, but the boys' one are around the corner, too.
Can't be that much.
Spring's coming.
Yeah, it's. You're right. Everything's moving rather quickly. It feels like we've been in a very abyssy period, but that's in part because you had these big breaks from both the National Hockey League and from the National Basketball Association. And I think part of it, too, is I don't think there's a lot of excitement right now for either team. Neither team is awful. The Wild are in good position, obviously, to make the playoffs. But with the Kaprizov injury news kind of hovering over everybody's head, it's hard to get thrilled about, let's go back out, let's go play, let's do it, let's see where we can go. And with the Wolves, it's a combination of two of their main pieces are still out hurt, perhaps not as long as Kaprizov's going to be out, but out nevertheless. And you haven't had much of a feeling of, all right, this thing's about to take off anyway. So I don't think for either of our winter teams right now, put it this way, if there's going to be some juice and some voltage, they're going to have to manufacture it from this point forward. In the case of the Wolves starting tonight, in the case of the Wild tomorrow, to kind of get people back into the flow and thinking like, well, there might be something going worth paying attention to the rest of the way. I think that's sort of where we're at to a certain extent. Guardsy, I'm assuming we'll be back together Monday. I'm not even sure what the Golden Gopher women's basketball schedule is at this point, because I assume that's why he was out today. I did not do enough said the TV program. I think it was Johnny Athletic today with Guardsy, I believe, but I'm not even sure. That's how out of the loop I am at this point. But hopefully I'll be able to rejoin that crew next week as well. There's Kat. He's had a good year, 54% from the floor. I think it's like 43% from three.
What would the Wolves have to do to get a guy like that?
Well, it's a very fair question.
But I'm old enough to remember when it was the majority opinion to get rid of Kat.
There's no question. I don't know if it was majority, but it was plenty. There were plenty of people. And I think Kat was a victim of his own kind of idiosyncratic behavior sometimes, some things he'd say, or falling down to the court on drives to the basket, and it was, is there a seriousness about it? But last year he should have answered a bunch of those questions, to be honest, because he did take a step defensively. He was now again in the playoffs, was he great every series? No, but nobody was, quite frankly. So I don't think you give up on a guy because of that on that basis. And there was a financial component to the decision. So it obviously looks devastating right now. There's no other word for it.
And Randall hasn't really panned out either.
No, he hasn't been awful. He's actually looked better before he got hurt. But a long way from here to there. That's the combination of issues. Minnesota United starts this weekend. Is that true?
Yeah, the MLS is starting out.
Are you excited?
Yeah. I mean, it's year 2 of their coach. They got rid of one of their strikers, but he wasn't very good. So, yeah, I'm down to refresh and reignite the love.
You'll somewhat pay attention?
I may check in from time to time.
Yeah. Well,
I love going to Allianz.
You're a bit of a soccer snob, though, in terms of the level of the league itself.
Yeah.
You can't seem to get past that, can you?
Well,
no, you're being honest about it. No, you can't.
It is true.
You don't have to apologize for that. I appreciate folks for hanging in with us today, despite my voice issues. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And as I mentioned, don't forget Wolves hoop action tonight in Houston, right here on the flagship. And I hope to be around to be part of the sermons program on Sunday morning. We'll talk to you then.
Whenever you call me, I'll be there. Whenever you want me, I'll be there.
But you know what?
Whenever